Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here in Hollywood, California. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. It's an honor and privilege to have you guys joining me here today, as it is every day, as we stand around, a bunch of friends talking about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, a little bit of television, a few other things here and there. And we do, of course, have a lot of stuff to talk about today. But before we get into all of our topics for today, we want to look at the results of yesterday's question of the day. You guys remember that yesterday we talked about the story about how the Game Awards just announced their nominees for Game of the Year. And we asked you, what do you think, out of all the games, at least 4 of the games that were nominated, which ones do you think were best structured to make a good movie? Thousands of you guys replied, and it was a dead tie. Red Dead Redemption 2 and God of War both came in with 46% of the vote. Assassin's Creed Odyssey came in way behind in third place at 5%, and Monster Hunter World at 3%, and there is a Monster Hunter World coming. Let's not forget. Anderson's got a Monster Hunter World movie coming. But yeah, it was pretty much a dead heat for the tie there. Red Dead Redemption 2 and God of War are the movies you guys said you would most like to see and you think are best structured games to be major motion pictures. We've got another question of the day today, and we'll get to that one in just a little bit. But for right now, we're going to go right off the top with this. This morning, a brand new trailer for Disney's Dumbo hit online. And, of course, this is the classic tale of the flying elephant. First of all, guys, what a cast in this movie. What a cast. You got Michael Keaton, Colin Farrell, who is criminally underrated as an actor. You got Danny DeVito in there. I thought the CGI looked really sweet and nice. Now, look, let's back up before we talk about this trailer. Do you guys even remember at this point that there was already one Dumbo trailer that came out like 17 years ago? You remember that? It's a great example. That first Dumbo trailer that everybody forgot about is a great example that it's absolutely pointless putting out trailers that early. You know, because somebody brought it up on the show the other day. They said, does anybody even remember there was a Dumbo trailer? And everybody in the chat board was like, oh yeah, right, there was a Dumbo trailer. Everybody forgot about it. But anyway, let's put that behind us. And that trailer wasn't bad, by the way. It just came out way too early. This new trailer comes out. Screw y'all. I love this trailer. I love this trailer. I thought it was sweet. I thought when they put Dumbo in the clown makeup, my heart just felt sad. And like Ray was reminding us, because Dumbo reminds me of one of my dogs, Shadow. And I seen the sad look on his face with the thing. It's so sweet. I love it. And then when he goes up to the car that his mother's locked up in, and she just puts out his trunk and they wrap trunks. I thought it was wonderful. It was sweet. It was charming. Hearing Michael Keaton in it. Michael Keaton sounds great in this. Seeing Colin Farrell there. Again, I think a tragically underrated actor. Again, that first trailer came out way too soon. Way too soon. But this one now comes, and I think it just looks sweet. It looks charming. I think the CGI looks perfect. And by perfect, I don't necessarily mean it looks 100% photorealistic, although it does look pretty damn photorealistic. By perfect, I mean it looks perfect for what this movie is. Because they give enough life to the character. You know what I mean? When you look at Dumbo, that does not look like a complete 100% photorealistic elephant, but that wouldn't really work in a movie like this. You need to give him a little bit more human characteristics, if you will, to communicate the emotion that we want communicated in the movie. And I think they did it, and I think it looks fabulous. And I got to tell you what, guys, I am now counting down the days. I am now counting down the days to see this movie. And this, correct me if I'm wrong, fact checker Jonathan or Ray, but I think Tim Burton is directing this, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so fact checkers, and I'm not even a big Tim Burton fan. I am not a big Tim Burton fan. And I think, my God, this looks fantastic. I know. Maybe this thing will be a steaming pile of crap. Absolutely, it could be. But for right now, you've got my attention. And right now, I'm on board for Dumbo because I thought this trailer looked great. All right, let's move on now to our main topics of the day. How do we select our main topics around here on the John Campea Show? It's simple. You guys submit the main topics by sending me your topics and questions to john@thejohncampeashow.com. Email me your topics and questions to john@thejohncampeashow.com. Make sure you put the word topic in the subject line. And as always, guys, keep those emails to 90 words or less. With that out of the way, let's get on to our first email of the day. And our first email today comes to us from Antoine Daniels, who writes, I've got to admit that even though a lot of people have soured on Avatar and it has been way too long since the original, I'm pretty excited. I read that they finished shooting the sequels. How did they shoot 4 movies so fast? Do you think there is a chance they rush things and it could make the quality of the movies suffer? All right, thanks a lot for the email, Antoine. And yes, you did read that right, sort of. The reports are going out right now. James Cameron got on social media himself, and they did announce they've been wrapping up production on the sequels for Avatar. So, yeah, he came out and he said that sequels wrapped. So that has caused a little bit of confusion. See, what has happened now is that it has created, for some people who didn't read into the details of the story, this impression that all 4 Avatar sequels, and for those of you who did not know, yes, you heard that right, there are not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 Avatar sequels coming. So some people read these headlines that have been out there that, hey, Avatar sequels complete shooting. Well, yes and no. You see, they have basically kind of wrapped on the first 2 sequels that they've been working on since November of 2017. They've been working on these 2 movies for about a year. So they've pretty much wrapped principal photography. I think they're still doing some pickup shots, whatever. No big deal. However, they have not even begun to touch Avatars 4, at that point it'd be Avatars 4 and 5. This is the basic schedule. Let's take a look at this. This is the basic schedule that Avatar has right now. See, right now, Avatar 2 is scheduled to come out next year, December 18th, 2020, with Avatar 3 then scheduled to come out December 17th, 2021. Now, if those films are successful, and we have found out and learned that nothing is a guarantee in this business, good or bad, nothing is guaranteed in this business. But if those 2 films are successful, then following the release of Avatar 3 in December of 2021, then James Cameron and crew will go into production on Avatars 4 and 5. I say down there, if success, Avatars 3 and 4, what that really should say is Avatar sequels 3 and 4, which is, of course, obviously Avatars 4 and 5. Now remember, James Cameron came out and was doing an interview, I guess it's a couple of months ago now. And he talks specifically about that, you can't just book 4 movies now. Yes, the first Avatar film, massive hit. Yes, the first Avatar film, now the single biggest movie and most successful movie in the history of film. Absolutely it is. But we live in a day and age now where just because that's the case, that doesn't mean you can just plan 4 movies. Remember, Hollywood learned a huge lesson with what went on with Universal and their monster universe. Remember that? They planned 18, 19, 25 movies that was going to kick off with Tom Cruise's The Mummy. And we saw where that went, right? So Hollywood's learned a lesson. James Cameron's learned a lesson. Hey, we think we can do 2, and it's probably very cost effective to shoot 2 back to back. It probably ended up costing them a lot less to shoot the first 2 sequels back to back. So they did that, but then they realized, we got to be cognizant of the fact that, who knows, maybe the audience doesn't come back out to support the next 2 Avatar films. Maybe it's been too late. Who knows? They do have faith in the property, but they do also want to be a little bit cautious. Personally, I think they've handled this perfectly. You can get away with at least 1. There's a lot of cost effectiveness in shooting 2 back to back, but you don't get carried away by trying to do all 4 at once. And you wait to see how Avatar 3 does in the theaters. Then you go in and you start shooting the final 2 chapters. I think it's a great plan. I really do. But here's the thing. It does raise the question. It has been a hell of a long time since that first Avatar came out. And the question we have been asking for years is it a little bit too late? And do people care about Avatar anymore? Well, that brings us to today's question of the day. And the question of the day is really simple, guys, is with them announcing the wrapping of production on these first two sequels, do you think people are generally going to be excited about Avatar? You got three options. Hell yes, people are going to be excited and are excited for Avatar. Hell no, they're not. And I gave you a third option, which is, wait a minute, they're making new Avatar movies? Because there's a lot of people out there who don't even know that. How do you vote on today's question of the day? Just go to my Twitter page. You can simply find me on Twitter at John Campea. Head on over there. It's the top tweet. You'll see the poll question there and register your vote. And we will go over the results of today's question of the day off the top on tomorrow's show. All right. With that out of the way, let's move on to the second email of the day. And the second email today comes to us from Dave Farley, who writes, okay, so I'm a bit confused. I thought that Disney was buying Fox, but I read on Twitter that Fox just announced they're still calling their company Fox even after Disney takes over all their assets. What's going on? What am I missing here? All right, thanks a lot, Dave. And you know what? As much as this whole thing about Disney taking over Fox and a bunch of their assets, the movie division, as exciting as it's been for a bunch of people, it's also been very confusing for a lot of people. A lot of people have been really confused about this whole thing at this point, and sometimes little bits of news that come out just add to the confusion. What he's talking about, for those of you who don't know what he's mentioning, is that Fox just had a big shareholders meeting at which they announced the name of the company that is going to be remaining. Remember, Disney's not taking over everything that Fox has. They're just taking over a bunch of Fox assets. The remnants are still going to be there. And a lot of people are wondering, what's the name of this Fox company going to be? Well, at the shareholders meeting, they announced the name of this brand new company after the Disney takeover. The name of the company that is left over after Disney takes away all the stuff is Fox. Yes, that's right. The name of the company is still going to be Fox. So what that tells us is a couple of things. Number one, it tells us that, hey, you know what? And we've known this the whole time, but it kind of puts an exclamation point on it, that this company, Fox, is still moving full ahead. They still have a lot of their own assets. They still have many of their own divisions, and they are going to be doing their own things separate from Disney. Disney's buying a bunch of their assets, but they're not buying all of it. And what's left is still going to be, in their thought, a thriving company that will still be called Fox. The second thing that this kind of tells us is that many people have been speculating whether or not when Disney takes over like 20th Century Fox and the film divisions, whether they will just keep the name Fox. Well, apparently they can't, because Fox is still going to be called Fox. To clear it up a little bit, Variety has an article on this, and this is one of the excerpts from that article. Here's what Variety said. They said, now that 20th Century Fox film and prestige label Fox Searchlight belong to Disney, or at least it will pretty soon, because remember, it's not all finalized yet, but it will pretty soon. It resurfaces an interesting question about the viability of those brand names surviving under Bob Iger's roof. Bob Iger is, of course, the chairman and CEO of Disney. One theory floated on the ground by chatty meeting attendees, this is of course at the shareholders meetings, Disney could simply kill the Fox name in each title, leaving the labels as 20th Century and Searchlight. So 20th Century and Searchlight. So now that's not saying for sure that Disney is even going to keep these companies intact. I am personally of the opinion, I think what Disney's going to do probably is strip them for parts. I think they're basically going to take all those assets, strip them for parts, and then use all the various different assets throughout the different Disney properties. But one of the options that is available to Disney is to, hey, just keep 20th Century together as its own division and let them function. Just take out the name Fox and just call it 20th Century, and that's the name of this film division. And just take the name Fox out of Searchlight and just call it Searchlight. That's going to be one of our indie film arms, one of our prestige film arms. That's something they could do, which is possible. Again, I'm just kind of in the mindset right now that I think what they're going to do, although I have nothing to back this up. This is just my own pure speculation. What I think they're going to do is probably strip those entities for parts and then distribute the assets amongst their different divisions. But I could be wrong about that. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle this moving forward. How do you think Disney is going to handle all these Fox assets they're picking up? Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, let's move on now to the third email today. And the third email today comes to us from our friend Sammy Lopez, who writes, did you see that Gina Carano was cast in The Mandalorian? I'm not complaining about it, but after they cast such a great actor like Pablo Pascal, isn't it a bit of a step backwards to cast a, well, less than great actress like Carano? What do you think? All right, thanks a lot for the email, Sammy. And here's the thing. You guys know, number one, on the Disney streaming service, Disney Plus, that's coming in 2019, one of the live action shows they're going to launch this thing with is, of course, The Mandalorian. We've all been excited about it. Jon Favreau is executive producing it. We got Dave Filoni's on board. Thor Ragnarok's Taika Waititi is in there directing, all this kind of stuff. And yesterday, what they announced was super exciting to me. Pablo Picasso, I keep wanting to say Pablo Picasso. I keep wanting to say Picasso. Pascal, who I love this actor amazingly, has joined. And now they have announced that former MMA fighter and now actress Gina Carano has joined The Mandalorian. All right. This brings up the question. You know, you get The Mandalorian and all these big, big names, both in front of, now with Pablo, and behind the cameras with Jon Favreau, Taika Waititi, Dave Filoni, Bryce Dallas Howard, on and on and on. And then today, they come out and announce that Gina Carano is going to be in there. Now, look, I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm a Gina Carano fan. I think this girl's amazing. I remember, as a matter of fact, her last MMA fight, she was dominant in MMA for many years, and then she was on the new American Gladiators. What was her name on American Gladiators again? Was it Crush? I think it was Crush. I think that was her American Gladiator name, Crush. She's physically just a superior specimen of a human being. Just incredibly powerful, strong, quick. She was a fantastic MMA fighter. And I remember her final MMA fight was against Chris Cyborg, who a lot of people consider to be the best female fighter in the world. And while that fight did get ended in the last second of the first round, I have never seen somebody have Cyborg in trouble like Carano had Cyborg in trouble in that first round. She actually got full mount on Cyborg and was raining down some pretty heavy punches, lost the position, however, things took a turn, and Chris Cyborg won the fight. But I used to, big fan of Gina Carano. Then she kind of made her way into acting in the movies. And it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. I mean, look, let's take a look here at some of the notable things that Gina Carano has done. Look, she did Haywire, with Soderbergh directed that. And she was in that one with Channing Tatum. I think Michael Fassbender was in that. No, Ewan McGregor. Ewan McGregor was in that with her as well. And Soderbergh made an interesting decision. He decided to take Gina Carano and make her the lead. She was the lead, and that was a mistake. That was a mistake. Now, look, it's an action film. Did Gina Carano pull off the action in that movie? You're damn right she did. She looked great. It looked so natural and so flawless. And if you ever get a chance, jump on YouTube and look up Ewan McGregor talking about Ewan McGregor talking about Gina Carano and that experience filming fight scenes with her. It's hilarious. It's amazing. She pulled all that off. But unfortunately, if you're going to be the lead actor in a movie, you got to do some heavy lifting with the acting. Not her strong suit, especially at that point. So the big mistake I think Soderbergh made in that movie was he took an actress who had some big weaknesses and he exposed her weaknesses. And that's not what a good director should do. A good director should highlight your performer's strengths and hide those weaknesses, like what Patty Jenkins did with Wonder Woman. That's why that movie turned out so well. But he didn't do that, and that turned up being a bit of a wah-wah. But then, you have her pop up in a movie like Fast and Furious 6. That really just, she doesn't have a lot of thespian work to do in the movie. It's just a lot of physicality, and she delivered. That was an example where the director took this asset, this actress, figured out, knew what her strengths were and what her weaknesses were, highlighted her strengths, hid her weaknesses. And then you get into Deadpool, which I thought she was really great in Deadpool, but once again, the premise where the director knew exactly what they had in this actress. They knew what her strengths were, they knew what she'd be able to do, and they knew what her weaknesses were and what she wouldn't be able to do effectively, and they hid those things and highlighted the things she did well. And her character in Deadpool came across great. I love this picture too. That is one of my favorite jokes in the first Deadpool, where she's having her fight with Colossus and she has a wardrobe malfunction and Colossus is like really gentlemanly. I love that. It was great. So look, Gina Carano is one of these performers that if you utilize her correctly, she could be a real asset to your project. If you utilize her correctly, like they utilized her in Deadpool, she could be a big asset to your film. If you utilize her incorrectly, like they did in Haywire, and Haywire overall is a pretty good film, but, you know, it kind of became apparent she wasn't the person who should have been the lead in that. If you use her incorrectly, she can be, you know, a negative to your project. So really what this all comes down to with The Mandalorian is, how are they planning on using her in the movie? How are they going to utilize this actress and what talent she brings to the table? Because I'm telling you right now, if they use her the right way, she's going to be a great asset. If you give her 5 long Shakespearean speeches to give in every episode, that could end up being a problem. That could end up being a problem because she's just not that strong of an actress. I love her, but she's just, let's be honest, she's just not that strong of an actress. You got to utilize her the right way. So I wouldn't get too excited about her inclusion in The Mandalorian, and I wouldn't get too worried about it. Let's take a breath. Let's wait and see what their plans are for her, because again, if they use her in the right kind of role, she could be a perfect addition to this thing. If they use her in the wrong kind of role, it could be a real detraction. We're just going to have to wait and see. All right, let's move on now to the next email today. And the next email today comes to us from Omar KG, who writes, I loved Wreck-It Ralph, and I saw that you watched Ralph Breaks the Internet. I wanted to know when you'll be able to, or when you'll be allowed to talk about it, because I wanted to know what you think about it. Thank you, and bring on the filthy. All right, thanks a lot, Omar. And yes, I actually got a chance to go, Ann and I got to go to the world premiere of Wreck-It Ralph, Ralph Breaks the Internet, a couple of weeks ago, and I was all set to do the review the next morning because the good folks at Disney, nobody told me there was a review embargo. I remember I watched the movie, and then the next morning I was getting ready for the show, and I started going through all the emails that I had with Disney about the movie and the screening, because normally when, you know, every studio, when they send you these invitations, when there's an embargo, they include in the email, you know, please note there's a review embargo on this picture until such and such and such and such. So I scoured through all the emails that I had with Disney over Wreck-It Ralph, or Ralph Breaks the Internet, I should say. And I saw nothing. But I noticed that there were no reviews up on Rotten Tomatoes. So like 15 minutes before I did the show, I actually emailed directly one of the Disney reps saying, look, is there an embargo? And they got back to me 5 minutes before the show. There's an embargo, so I had to hold off on it. But now the embargo is lifted, and I can talk about this movie. First of all, Omar, I am completely on board with you. I loved the first Wreck-It Ralph. The first Wreck-It Ralph, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I believe Wreck-It Ralph came out the same year as Brave, the other Disney animated film, Brave, which was a Pixar film under Disney. And Brave won Best Animated Picture that year. And I like Brave. Brave's good. But Brave was nowhere near as good as Wreck-It Ralph. It was just not in the same league as Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph should have won Best Animated Picture that year. But whatever, I digress. I love that film. I thought it was spectacular. I feel like they should have gotten on this, you know, this sequel a year or two sooner. But anyway, here it is, Wreck-It Ralph, Ralph Breaks the Internet. It was the same year. Thanks, Ray. 2012. Thank you so much, Ray. And I got to tell you what, guys. This movie's awesome. This movie's great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I am not prepared to say whether I like it as much as the first one or not. I need to see it a second time. But it is thoroughly entertaining. It's got all the charm of the first one. Because that's one of the things that the first one did so well. It was a very funny movie, but not roll out of your seat hysterical, but it had humor with great charm. And this movie, this sequel, delivers on all that charm, and it goes deep. It actually goes, when you start heading into the third act, you start realizing it's dealing with some themes that are far deeper than you're used to seeing out of this type of movie. And it does get pretty deep. Ralph is great. Penelope's great. These new side characters are great. But by the way, I want to talk about one set of characters in particular that you see in the trailers, and that's the Disney princesses. The Disney princesses you saw in the trailers, they make an appearance. Now, I thought, and maybe you guys would have been like me in this, from the trailers, I got the impression that the Disney princesses probably just pop up for one quick scene. I'm not going to give much away here, except to say the Disney princesses play a bigger role in this movie than you might think, and they're in more of this movie than you might think. Because I thought they'd be in for like a 1-minute quick cameo. They are in this movie more than you might think. And I got to tell you, I loved it. And when you're bringing in all these Disney princesses, you're going for novelty, and novelty can feel pretty cheap and a little cringy, but they crushed it. They absolutely crushed it. And one of the biggest laughs in the movie, I didn't even realize was in one of the trailers. I guess I didn't see it. But one of the biggest laughs in the movie for me had to do with the girl from Brave. I can't remember what the character's name is from Brave, but she's Scottish, right? And there's this, I don't want, you know what? I'm not going to give the joke away. I'm not going to give the joke. Once you see the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it has to do with her and the other princesses making a comment about her. And I just about spit out my popcorn. I laughed so hard. They were charming. They were great. They all got featured. It's not like they, were one of the girls from Frozen gets highlighted, but, maybe Moana doesn't. No, they all get a moment to be highlighted and featured. And I thought it worked great. I thought it was very, very charming. So now you guys know the basic gist of the movie, right? Penelope's game breaks. It's an old video game, so there's a risk that they may just trash the game. They discover that the part they need to fix her game is on the internet, so Vanellope von Schweetz and Wreck-It Ralph go onto the internet to go and try to find this thing to save her game, and that is where we find this movie at this point. I'm going to point this out too. Ray and I got invited last night to go to this VR experience with a Wreck-It Ralph, Ralph Breaks the Internet VR experience. It was crazy good. Folks, keep your eyes open for this. If it opens in a mall near you, go check it out. They put the full head VR thing on you, like a full helmet and a full body vest with a gun, and you walk into this thing. It is the most immersive VR world thing I have ever walked into. It is crazy. And you get this gun that when you pump the gun, you change your ammo from milkshakes to pancakes. If you pump it again, you go back to milkshakes, and each of them do different things. Look, I don't even know how to explain the experience we had, but it was crazy fun. If you get a chance to go and be a part of that, do go and be a part of that. But yeah, look, overall, Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet, charming, fun, so consistent with the characters we had. We pick up with them a few years after the events of Wreck-It Ralph. It's just great. It's one of those films that I left with my heart feeling happy. And I think you will too. So if you get a chance to run out and check out Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, go do it. I think you're going to have a good time. All right, let's move on now to the next email of the day. And the next email today comes to us from Vivian Nicholson, who writes, like almost everyone else who watches this show, I love comic book movies. I never read a comic until after I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and I watched everything Marvel and DC had to offer after that. But sometimes these movies feel like maybe they're missing something. What would you say are some of the bigger problems facing comic book movies today? All right, thanks a lot for the email, Vivian. And yeah, I mean, look, we just put up, Robert Meyer Burnett and I just put up our newest episode of The Weekly Hero. It's up online right now. You can go check that out. But, I like to talk a lot about comic book movies. I love comic book movies. They're the biggest genre in the world today, obviously. And so you will forgive us if we often just get caught up about how everything in the comic book world of movies is awesome. Everything is awesome. I mean, that's kind of the way it is right now, because you got movies like Venom. It's about to cross $700 million at the box office, for heaven's sakes. We just had Infinity War cross the $2 billion mark at the box office. Black Panther made like $1.3 billion at the box office. Ant-Man made over $620 million at the box. Ant-Man, for heaven's sakes. So, yeah, we do kind of get caught up in the euphoria about how everything is great in the world and the genre of comic book movies, for sure. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there are several problems facing the genre, as every genre has. But there are several problems facing the genre that I think studios, film fans, producers, directors need to be cognizant of and aware of and keep their eye on. Now, look, I'm going to list down what I think are the 5 biggest problems facing the comic book movie genre and comic book movies in general. Do not misinterpret me as saying that these things are doomed. Don't misinterpret any of these problems I'm about to list as saying that everything's doomed. No. These are problems. These are challenges. Everything has problems. Everything has challenges. They've just got to be looked at, addressed, and conquered. But I think these are the 5 challenges and the 5 problems that the comic book genre is going to have to face and deal with as they move forward into bigger and bigger success. Problem and challenge number one, the lack of studios making them. This is becoming more and more apparent in recent months. Now look, if you want to talk about musical biopics, historical dramas, romantic comedies, buddy cop films, murder mysteries, horror films, action adventure, fantasy sci-fi, whatever, every studio makes all those films. We have vast diversity that comes out with new creative ideas coming from multiple studios and multiple sources. You want a sci-fi adventure? Warner Brothers will make one. Paramount will make one. Universal will do one. Fox, up to a point, was making them. Disney would do them, blah, blah, blah. So you get all these different studios really contributing to the thing. That means you're going to get some terrible ones, but it also means you're going to get some great ones, and it keeps the whole idea. When you got more people involved in it, it keeps it fresher. More things can happen. The world of the comic book genre has always been a little bit more limited, right? Because for a couple of years, you basically had 4 studios putting out comic book films, right? You had Disney, you had Warner Brothers, you had Sony with their Spider-Man line, and you had Fox with their X-Men properties. Well, what's been happening? Sony's become more limited because they licensed Spider-Man back to Marvel, at least for the time being. So they put out Venom, but it has lowered their output. And now we've got Fox closing down, and we've got these X-Men properties now moving over to Disney. Now, many people hail this as a big win, and I can understand why. But ultimately, I think we as film fans, we're a little bit short-sighted. We all are. I am, you are. We're a little bit short-sighted when it comes to our movies. We think something that could happen right now is really cool, but we don't think about the long-term health. You know, I've talked about this a lot, so I'll just say this again briefly. You know, Fox brought something to the table with their comic book movies that was not being offered by anybody else. Fox brought several things to the table that Warner Brothers wasn't bringing to the table, that Disney and Marvel weren't bringing to the table, and they gave us a whole nother dimension of things in our comic book movie experience. I've said this before, I will say it again. Had the X-Men properties been under Disney for the last number of years, we would have never gotten Logan. What I think is one of the 3 best comic book movies ever made. It never would have happened. Never would have happened. Had the Fox X-Men properties been under Disney the last 10 years, we never would have gotten Deadpool, which is, I think, a top 10 comic book movie of all time. We never would have gotten Deadpool 2. That stuff would never have happened. And, you know, they've done other great things with, you know, Days of Future Past, which I also think is a top 10 comic book all-time film. I think X-Men Days of Future Past is up there. A lot of people like X-Men First Class, the original X-Men film, which gave birth to this new era of comic book movies. X-Men 2, which I thought for a long time was the greatest comic book movie ever. That's changed, but for a long time it was. The point here is that Fox brought elements and dimensions of the comic book genre to the table that the other studios simply were not. And yes, while there are a lot of good things that can happen with Disney and Marvel getting all these X-Men characters back, that's the short term. The long-term reality is now we've got another one less fewer player in the game. Universal's not making comic book movies. Lionsgate's not making comic book movies. Like a lot of these big major studios not making comic book movies, and now we've got one fewer voice to bring something different to the table. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you that it's a horrible thing that Disney's getting the X-Men characters back. There are going to be some very good things that come out of that. But that's short term. The long term is now we got one fewer voice. And this is something that this genre as a whole in the industry will have to look at in the years moving forward. So yeah, lack of studios making them is going to become a problem. All right. Let's look at the second problem I see in this that's going to cause some challenges. And that's number 2 here, is that the reliance on shared universes. I'm not going to go a lot into this. I've talked about this a lot, though. But gone are the days, it seems, that Christopher Reeve's Superman movie, one of the things that made it so magical about the miraculous and the magnificent happening within the mundane was the fact that in that world, there was nothing like Superman. Superman was a distinct and unique character in that world that caused a sense of awe and wonder about the character and all that kind of stuff. Had Christopher Reeve's Superman taken place in a cinematic universe where there are 45 other superpowered beings running around, it takes away from the uniqueness of that. And that, I think, is something about the specialness of it. Look back to Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man film, and even Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man was unique in his universe. There weren't other superpowered beings running around saving their cities. There was something unique about Spider-Man which made him stand out. Look at Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight movies. That was a world without the supernatural. Christopher Nolan's universe was a universe without superpowers and super beings from other dimensions and other worlds. And it made Bruce Wayne, his Bruce Wayne, stand apart as something truly unique and that gave an extra layer of richness to the characters. Today, we are more and more getting this over-reliance on shared cinematic universes, where less and less are these characters truly unique in the worlds that they inhabit. Now, look, there's a lot of advantages to shared superhero universes as well. You know I love my shared superhero universes. I do. There's a lot of advantages. But unfortunately, things are moving towards an either-or. It's not even an either-or. There is nothing. There is no such thing as the true standalone superhero movie anymore. And I think long-term, that's going to become a problem. And I think it's something, I think we can live in a world where we have true standalone superhero films, comic book movies, and shared universe superhero comic book movies. That's part of the reasons why I'm so excited about this Joker movie they're doing with Joaquin Phoenix. Because at last, we're getting a true standalone Elseworld kind of movie again. And I think that the comic book genre, for its long-term health, needs to start looking at a wider variety of, yes, movies and characters that inhabit one shared universe, but also having standalone movies with characters that don't live in some big superhero shared universe. I think that's going to become important for the long-term health of the genre. Short-term, everything looks fine, but we got to start thinking long-term, and I think this is one of the challenges that's going to face the genre that they will address moving forward. All right, let's look at what I believe is problem number 3. Diminishing returns. What do I mean by that? I mean simply this. Comic book movies, for the most part, there are exceptions, and we'll talk about those in a second here. Comic book movies constantly feel the need to up the stakes. Up, 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 up. If you want to know how true that is, even amongst fans, about 80% of the emails that I get from people regarding where's the DC or where's the MCU going to go after all this Infinity War stuff is, always starts the same way. Well, how are they going to get a bigger threat now? Now you got to get a bigger threat. You know, you had Thanos wipes out half the galaxy, but now you need a bigger threat. The next movie's always got to be something bigger and bigger and bigger. And it seems like almost every comic book movie at this point now has to come down to some boring thing of, oh, the world's at stake. Even Venom, which I like. I had a great time with Venom. But even Venom, when you get into the third act of the film, not only is it about Eddie and the symbiote trying to figure out how to work together and how to coexist, they had to throw in this thing with Riot saying, oh yeah, by the way, now I'm going to bring millions of others to this planet. We're going to take over the world. Now you got to save the world. Everything's about saving the world. Everything's about saving the world. Suicide Squad, right? At first you think it's about a bunch of these, outsider characters, the worst of the worst to take care of some individual problems. But by the time you get into the third act, nope, the whole world's at stake. The world's going to end. We've got to save the world. Then culminating in something like Infinity War. Now it's not just the world. Now it's half of life in the galaxy is gone, right? And even Ant-Man. The first Ant-Man, which I often praise as changing the levels because Ant-Man wasn't so much about saving the world. It's about saving his family. And there's something beautiful about changing those gears. But even Ant-Man, by the third act, Yellow Jacket is taking this stuff and he's going to sell it to Hydra. And all these weapons are going to be all over the world now. And now Ant-Man's got to save the world by stopping him. Even Black Panther, which was for the most part about Wakanda, but again, by the end, nope, Killmonger is sending out all these Wakandan weapons all over the world. Now we're going to take over the world. Now it's about saving the world. Everything seems to be, we got to put it into 10th gear, first movie out. And eventually, when you've got a franchise and a genre, beyond a franchise, like a genre, that is constantly going to that well over and over and over again, it hasn't happened yet, but at some point, we're not going to get fatigued of comic book movies, but we're going to get fatigued of the thing of what's threatening the world now. It also limits the stories you tell when you're constantly going to, got to save the world, got to save the world, got to save the world. What happened to saving the girl? What happened to saving the neighborhood? What happened to saving the city? You know, and what we've got now, so I've got a picture of Galactus here because a lot of people, well, I guess the next thing you got to do is Galactus because Galactus has to come and tear the Earth apart, right? Like, there's this sense of diminishing returns. If you keep pushing that envelope more and more and more and more, eventually, going to get a little tired of it, right? It's not going to have the same thrill anymore. You got to change gears, and we need more comic book movies that stop going right to the top of the mountain of got to save the world or save the galaxy and got to save the kid, got to save the town, got to save. Back in the 80s, it was always about saving the neighborhood rec center, right? Remember, whatever happened to those? Save the neighborhood rec center. You know, they've got to start looking at that, and I think they will moving forward, but it is something that they got to address because that could be a long-term problem if they don't address it. All right, let's look at the fourth problem here. The fourth problem is that there are no new heroes. And what I mean by that is, like, John, wait a minute, there are lots of comic book characters that haven't had movies yet. Yeah, there are. But right now we're kind of living in this puddle where there's a bunch of tadpoles in the puddle. And yeah, you can go and pull out, there's a bunch of tadpoles. You can pull out a different tadpole tomorrow than the one you did today, but it's an isolated puddle and there's no new tadpoles popping up. Eventually, you're going to run out of compelling characters you can tell stories for. There's no new life. I don't really see any effort on Marvel's part. I don't see any effort on Warner Brothers' part to try to go beyond just the comic books and start bringing new characters and new creations into this superhero genre. Now, I've got a picture of Will Smith up here as Hancock because Hancock is honestly really the last true superhero movie that wasn't, strictly speaking, based on a comic book. It was a new hero. It was a new thing. And I think while we still are living in an age where we've got plenty of characters we need to look at and plenty of characters we can go through, I do believe that this industry, and that includes Warner Brothers, that includes Disney, and maybe some other studios can step up and try this as well, create some new characters, breathe new life into it by trying some different things. I think that's something they're going to need to do for the long term. All right, let's look at the fifth problem. And this, quite honestly, is the biggest problem. As we see Superman dying and then Superman coming back. Problem number 5, there are simply no consequences anymore in comic book movies. There are simply no consequences anymore. There are no stakes in comic book movies anymore. And that, almost more than any of the other 4 problems that I mentioned, this is probably poses the biggest problem to it as a genre. Max Landis, who is a quirky dude, but he put on a couple of years ago what is one of the absolute best videos on YouTube. You probably know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I highly recommend you go over to YouTube at some point and check this out. Max Landis put up this YouTube video a number of years ago on the death and return of Superman. And it is absolutely hilarious. Mandy Moore's in it, Simon Pegg's in it, Ron Howard's in it. He's got all these people in it. It is absolutely hilarious. But it ends with an incredible observation. And that was this. He says, the death of Superman didn't kill Superman. The death of Superman killed death. Because when Superman came back, as Max points out, it undid every emotional truth, every emotional highlight, every true raw emotional moment that the death of Superman brought on. The audience realized, oh, so that was all for nothing. That was meaningless. Superman dying meant nothing because he just brought him back. And then what Max Landis does is he brings up the screen major superhero characters that have died and come back to life since the death of Superman. And it's like thousands. When you know these characters don't die, when you do fake deaths like Marvel does a lot of, and Warner Brothers has done too, over and 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 over again 1,000 times. There's nothing at stake anymore. There are no consequences. When, yeah, the planet can blow up, but wait a minute. I've got this quirky little device that can take me back in time 5 minutes and stop the planet from blowing up. Nothing matters in these movies anymore. Nothing matters. Here's a great example. Let's take a couple of the best shows of all time. Game of Thrones and Sons of Anarchy, right? One of the things that made those shows so compelling and gritty and on the edge of your seat is that characters died in those shows. So every time in Sons of Anarchy, when what you would think in most TV shows is some inconsequential little gunfight that happens, you are on the edge of your seat because you honestly don't know if your favorite character is about to catch a bullet and die. And if he dies, he ain't coming back in 3 episodes. He's dead and he's gone. And man, Sons of Anarchy did that with several of my favorite characters, but it always let you know that anything could happen. The stakes are real, the consequences are high, and it makes you invested in that and you feel the tension of it. When Luke Cage, now this isn't a fake death thing, but when Luke Cage has a scene in a show where he walks in just with a couple of average mobsters and they're just shooting guns at it, there's no tension. Luke Cage is bulletproof. There's no excitement in the scene. There's no tension in it because there are no consequences. There are no stakes. In the superhero genre now, you never worry about the hero because the hero's going to be fine. And you know what? As much as I love Avengers Infinity War, and I love that movie. And as much as I love the ending with the snap, the reality is the death of these characters, including Spider-Man's, I don't want to go, Mr. Stark, which is great. I mean, Tom Holland played that beautifully, and it had impact. But I'm going to tell you right now, at least half of the impact was lost on me because I knew Spider-Man Far From Home is coming next year. Peter Parker's going to be breathing again in less than 12 months. I didn't have to worry about it. Oh no, Black Panther dusted. Oh, Black Panther 2 is already being worked on by Ryan Coogler? All right. Cool scene still. Great scene. But half the emotional impact was gone. And all these characters that died, doesn't matter. They're coming back. They're coming back. This is going to become bigger and a bigger problem because when you do not have that tool in your belt as a filmmaker to elicit that tension, to elicit the sense of consequences and real stakes, your genre will become thinner and thinner and thinner. The reason the superhero genre has been able to grow so great is because it's gotten deeper and deeper and deeper. But now we're in the place where we're risking getting thinner and thinner and thinner. At some point, more characters like Quicksilver are going to have to be killed and actually stay dead. That there is consequence, that there is weight. Hell, even in Infinity War, snap, half the universe is gone, but no big deal. We know it's coming back. And again, none of these 5 things are absolute things. These are things that are going to kill the genre. No. But they're challenges that the genre and the industry is going to have to face. Hey, John, let's run through those 5 one more time. So let's go back one more time just to highlight the 5 that we had. Problem 1, lack of studios making them, and now Fox is gone. Problem number 2, reliance on shared universes, the uniqueness of the true individual superhero movie. It's not either or. You can do both and I think they should start looking at that a little bit. Problem number 3, diminishing returns. Not every movie needs to be about saving the world. Give us some deeper stories with some smaller stakes. I think that'll go a long way. With some movies that still have to save the world for sure. Problem number 4 is no new heroes. They got to start trying to create new things instead of just drawing on the old archives. Hey, draw on all the old archives for sure. But again, it's not an either or. It's a both and. Do both. And finally, I think the biggest challenge that's going to be facing the industry is the fact that there are simply no stakes and simply no consequences anymore. They've got to start dealing with the fake deaths. They've got to start dealing with the death issue. Because I'll tell you what, even if Avengers 4 comes out, it's like, well, technically they don't come back to life. Technically, they figured out a way to create a new universe, and these are different versions of all those characters. Even that's a cop-out. You know what I mean? It is a problem they need to start addressing, or else I'm never going to feel any sort of fear for my hero again, even if you cut their heads off, because I'll just go, look at my watch, give it 10 minutes, the character will be back. They got to address that. All right, guys, that will do it for all of the emails today. Thanks a lot for sending those in. We've got a little bit of time left here, so we're going to go over now and take some live questions. You guys have been sending in a bunch of live questions, so let's get over there and take a bunch of those right now. And we're going to start off the live questions from Ben Hayusa, who writes, I got a Greatest Showman vibe from the new Dumbo trailer. I did too. I totally did. It really did have a Greatest Showman kind of feel to it. But damn, it certainly gave me all smiles. I'm up for it. Dude, it was charming. It had heart. It was cute. Michael Keaton looks fantastic. I'm with you, Ben, on this completely. I think the trailer was really special. I think it was a special little trailer. And even I, a dude who am not a Tim Burton fan, I'm quite excited for this. I just hope he does a better job with this than he did with that Alice in Wonderland pile of garbage. Vinder Singh writes, thanks for putting him in my place yesterday, John, about the reboots and sequels. Sometimes I don't think before I say. My frustration was really aimed at the new Predator movie, which really let me down this year. Oh, well, Vinder, look, just because I brought up some things for you to consider, and just because I disagreed with you, doesn't mean I'm putting you in your place, nor does it mean you should change your mind. I'm just offering you some different perspectives to look at, and then if you change your mind, you change your mind. But if you don't, you don't. Don't feel pressured either way on that. But talking about, dude, that is a sacred truth you just said about the Predator movie this year. How often and how many times over the past 7 months have I gotten on this show and talked about how great the new Predator movie is going to be? Yeah, that one trailer may have been a little bit, other Predator things may have been, don't worry, guys, it's Shane Black. Shane Black's here. Shane Black is going to save this. I guarantee you this. Yeah, well, and the movie blew. It sucked. Super disappointing, Vrinder. Dude, my friend, you are not the only one who was, like, I remember I walked out of that theater having watched the new Predator movie. Just like I just got out of a car accident. Like, you know, where I wasn't injured, but you get in a car accident, you're just kind of stunned, and you get out of your car, and you're like walking around, like that's. I was like, what just happened? Shane, the guy who directed The Nice Guys, directed this, and it turned out this bad. Couldn't believe it. So yeah, you and me, Vrinder, completely on the same page. James Welsh writes, I recommend seeing Peter Jackson's World War I documentary, They Shall Not Grow Old. Amazing how he and his team managed to colorize those World War I clips. Well, I mean, that's old technology, really. But listen, James, seriously, look, this has been a real passion project for Peter Jackson. I've been dying to watch this. I just haven't had time to sit down and watch it yet. But it is high on my list. I'm hearing nothing but good things about it. And, we're having some wacky things happening on the thing. And we're gone, and we're back, and whatever. We're going to move on as Jonathan gets that sorted out in the back. But yes, man, I really do want to see it. I do want to see that quite a bit. All right. We're moving on now here to the next one from Jamie J. Roycer, who writes, thoughts on the sequel to Alien Covenant? Heard they're trying to put the focus on the engineers and AI in the next film. Honestly, what I think here is that I don't even think there's going to be a sequel to it. I don't think there's going to be one. The fact of the matter is the box office really struggled with that film, with Alien Covenant. I actually liked Alien Covenant. I liked Alien Covenant more than Prometheus. I really did. I liked Alien Covenant more than Prometheus. Now, not everybody did. There were people who didn't like the film, and that's cool. But I thought it did a pretty nice job of getting back to the roots a little bit of the Alien franchise, while at the same time having a little bit more of a philosophical slant like Prometheus did. I thought Covenant was a nice mix between the traditional Alien and Prometheus. And it worked for me. But the reality is it did not do great at the box office. That's the reality. Did not do great at the box office. So I don't even think we're going to see one at all. Rami J. Royster follows up. Why do Pure Flix films have an audience? Well, because, Rami, film is subjective. Look, Pure Flix put a lot of family-friendly stuff, some faith-based stuff, things like that. Oh, and we're back up and running. Look at that. But, I mean, they're films that aren't for me. But just because they aren't for me doesn't mean they're not going to have an audience. There are films out there that people really want to see. You know, and that's one of them. Just because it doesn't work for us doesn't mean nobody should like them, right? So, yeah, that's why they've got their audience, man. And they're serving an underserved demographic. There's not a lot of people that put out the type of films that you can find on PureFlix. And so, yeah, I mean, it's totally understandable they get their audience. Tacky75 writes, it's a hell of a thing killing a man. Take away all he's got and all he's going to have. Dude, one of the most celebrated Westerns of all time, Clint Eastwood, Unforgiven. It's a hell of a thing killing a man. That's a terrible Clint Eastwood. I don't know why I just did that. Great quote from a great movie, like a punch you in the face kind of movie. Oh my God, that movie's so good. Marie Seifring writes, have you had a chance to see the new Rosamund Pike movie, A Private War? No, I have not, but I've been dying to watch that. The ads look intriguing. Thoughts? I honestly do not know why, for the life of me, that Rosamund Pike is not a bigger star than she is. Great, she's a big star. People know who she is. But I, for the life of me, do not know why she's not an even bigger star than she is. This girl is stupid talented. You're right. Absolutely, Marie. The trailers for this thing look really good, and I'm really looking forward to watching it. Tucker Flynn writes, you caught up on Flash? Ragdoll was creepy. No, I am not caught up on Flash. I am caught up until the last episode. I have not seen the most recent episode. I think the last episode I saw was News Flash. That was the last episode I saw, which I believe is the second to last episode. The newest episode I have not caught up on, but I will. I will get up on that. I got caught up, by the way. I've been slowly making my way through, getting caught up on my shows. I am now caught up on Arrow. I am almost caught up on Flash. I'm almost caught up on Black Lightning. I am almost caught up on The Gifted. So I'm getting there, slowly but surely, but I'm getting there. Rami J. Royster writes, there should be a sequel to Bridge to Terabithia with false marketing once again. I believe as though misleading trailers is the niche to their movies. Dude, I mean, for those of you who haven't heard me tell the story before, Bridge to Terabithia was a nice little Disney film. It was a really nice little film. But probably the most egregious, misleading marketing campaigns of all time. The movie Bridge to Terabithia that they marketed in their trailers was not the movie that they played in theaters. And which is unfortunate because the movie they played was actually quite a good movie. But the trailers to Bridge to Terabithia, for those of you who haven't heard me bellyache about this before, the trailers were, it was kind of Lord of the Rings, Alice in Wonderland. It's just like, oh, Bridge to Terabithia. Terabithia is this magical kingdom in the forest that these two children these two best friend children find in the forest, and they go and have adventures in Terabithia. That's what the trailers made it look like. That movie had nothing to do with that. About a kid who dies and everybody's sad and depressed. It's a good movie. But I remember there were parents coming out of that movie going, what the actual fuck? Coming out of that movie. I just brought my 7-year-old kid thinking we're going to get fairy tale and adventure and blah, blah. No, it's about this kid died and dealing with loss and the pain and blah, blah. It's like, that is not what you told me this movie. And it pissed off a lot of people. And rightfully so. Now, thankfully, Disney has never done that again. But holy crap, it is the worst example ever of misleading marketing for a movie. It was Bridge to Terabithia. Okay, Tucker Flynn writes, over under 60% that Sony renews Spidey's Marvel contract. I'm going to take the over on that because Venom was a big hit. You guys know I've been saying forever, if Venom flopped, kiss Spider-Man goodbye out of the MCU. If Venom flopped, Sony would have been, well, we tried doing these movies without Spider-Man and we can't, so yoink, they're going to take Spider-Man back. And there's nothing Marvel could have done about it. But I also said, if Venom is a success, then Sony goes, oh, we can make this work without Spider-Man. So we can make money off Marvel by having Spider-Man in the MCU, and we can have our own successful films. Win-win. So, yeah, I will take the over 60%. I'm not saying it's 100%. I'm not even saying it's 90% per se, but I will take the over on 60% that they do renew the Spider-Man contract. All right. Ant Banks, 1984, writes, it would have been cool during a Stan Lee cameo if he noticed Thor's hammer off to the side while nobody was looking and picked it up because he's worthy. Dude, look, I've heard that theory before. I've heard other people like float that idea before. I will not be surprised or shocked in the least if we see either in Avengers 4, Spider-Man Far From Home, something. If even in the background of Spider-Man Far From Home you see Stan Lee walking down, oh, what's this? And there's this Mjolnir hammer sitting on the ground. Maybe it gets remade, whatever, and he goes, just picks it up and walks away with it. I wouldn't put it by them at all to do something like that. It would be pretty fun to see. Let's see. Do It For Cash writes, Green Book is a wonderfully uplifting film about a friendship that overcomes racial and class misconceptions filled with delightful moments of levity. Dude, you know that instantly became my #1 most anticipated film of the year once the trailer dropped. Mahershala Ali, Viggo Mortensen, that trailer looks, I mean, really stupid. It looks stupid good. Like it's just dumb. It looks so good. Like this is ridiculous that a movie looks that good. And has been ranked, it overtook for me everything else coming out this year. It even overtook Aquaman for me as my #1 most anticipated for the rest of the year to see. I cannot wait to watch this. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on it, man. I appreciate that. Dim-Sum05 writes, the sun shines warmly even in the winter. Sounds like a line from Lord of the Rings. That, of course, was a line I said. I just made it up off the top of my head, referencing the fact that the reports came out that Henry Cavill was out as Superman, and everybody was waiting for Warner Brothers' statement, and Warner Brothers' statement was a meaningless line of gibberish. They didn't confirm or deny. They said, well, we have no plans for Superman at this time. We have always liked working with Henry Cavill, and we still do. What does that mean? And what I said was, you might as well have just come out and said, the sun shines warmly even in the winter, because that would have made about as much sense. But thanks for the callback to that, Dim Sum. I'm Upset writes, thoughts on the 2013 Texas Chainsaw film? I wasn't big on it, to be honest with you. Wasn't big on it. Now, granted, no, don't confuse. I know there are some people that are huge fans of the original, and they, the 2013 just didn't do it justice, and blah, blah, blah. I get that. I'm not one of those. I like the original. I do. I like it as much as most people. But I just didn't think the remake or that version of it was all that great, to be honest with you. That's just my thoughts. But I got some other friends of mine that liked it quite a bit. Odai Alamani writes, do you think they can do right by Narnia on Netflix? Well, everything's possible. And as far as Netflix goes, look, we've seen them crush some things. We've seen them trip over some things. It's like anything else. Disney could put out a movie and it's a Wreck-It Ralph. Yay! Or they could put out a movie and it's a Wrinkle in Time. Aw. We never know. Is it possible? Yes. To be frank with you, though, and I grew up reading the Narnia books. They're tricky books to make into movies. I was actually kind of really pleasantly surprised how good that first Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was when Liam Neeson was doing the voice of Aslan. I was actually really pleasantly surprised how well that turned out. The other ones, not so much, obviously, but they're very, very tricky books to try to translate into live-action movies. Can Narnia or can Netflix unlock that code there? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But I'm going to be curious to see how that turns out. All right, guys, just got time for a couple more here. Let's see, where'd we go? You know what? I'm going to try to get through all of the remaining questions. I'm going to fly by here pretty good because I want to get all these answered. Miguel writes, hola, John. I saw 40-Year-Old Virgin, my all-time favorite comedy, by the way, for the first time, and I couldn't watch more than 20 minutes. It was awful. Oh, dude, what are you talking about? I know it's one of your favorites. Movies indeed are subjective, and they are. Movies are subjective. To me, the 40-Year-Old Virgin, it's in a tie for my all-time favorite comedy. That and the John Ritter, Christopher Reeve, Michael Caine, Carol Burnett comedy, Noises Off. They are 1 and 1A to me. All-time favorite comedy. 40-Year-Old Virgin to me, funniest film, but it's got heart. Love the characters. All that kind of stuff. Oh, I love that film. But you know what, Miguel? All film is subjective. And just because I love it doesn't mean you need to love it. And that's what makes being a film fan so much fun. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Static Space Sean writes, do you have a link to the merchandise store? I need the John Campea Show mug. I do. You know what? Let me just double check. I think I know what it is. Let me just look here. I think it's... I'm going to find out if it is. Come on, load up, load up, load up. Yes, no, no. I don't know what it is. You know what? I will find a link to I created a merchandise store, by the way, guys. You can get mugs and hats and even John Campea Show underwear. You can bring on the filthy whatever. I should be putting a link to that in the show description. I can't even remember the URL off the top of my head. It's coming. It's coming. Don't worry, it's coming. But thanks for asking about it. Rami J. Royster writes, 11 years later, why James Cameron wait so long? Well, I don't know. Maybe he was working on other things. Maybe he wanted to finalize his idea. Maybe he wanted to develop. I know part of it was developing new technology that he wanted to have in order to shoot the movies the way he wanted to shoot them. These are big, expensive films to do. I mean, there's probably a million. It's what I do know is it's not just a matter of James Cameron going, I could get around to doing Avatar 2, but I think I'm going to read the paper and masturbate a little bit. Like, I don't think it was that. I don't think that's what was killing his time. I think there were probably a lot of different issues that stacked up. And yes, it took them a hell of a long time. It took them too long, but it's probably a multitude of issues. It's probably not just one thing that did it. Tennis Flato writes, I don't remember where I heard the theory of Stan Lee was actually a watcher. All cameos are the same character. I like to believe he's out there hanging out with John Campea talking comics. Well, the whole idea that the Stan Lee character is actually a watcher because he pops up in every movie, right? And that was actually fed into even more in the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 cameo when we swing by that planet and it's all the Watchers standing there with Stan Lee going, and then I was a delivery man or something like that, right? That kind of fed into that whole theory that Stan Lee is indeed a watcher in all these movies, and he's actually one and the same character. Okay, last 3 questions really quick here. Frost1977 writes, over or under 15% that the new Star Wars TV show will have one Force sensitive, maybe the lead, or that Ahsoka / Sabine will show up one time at some point. I believe no. I don't think the timelines line up. Well, actually, maybe the timelines do line up a little bit. I'd have to double check on the timelines. I'm going to guess no. I think they're going to move away from the Force sensitives in this. I don't think they're going to go that way. But look, it's going to be, what did they say, 10 episode? 10, 11, or 12 episode season. I can't remember exactly. Maybe they'll have room to fit one in. 15% to me seems a little bit high. I'll take the under on 15% on that. Kiri's Road writes, say Son Goku is a god. Well, you just got me to say it. I don't know what Son Goku is. I mean, obviously it's a Dragon Ball thing, but there you go. Carrie Neves writes, I read Bridge to Terabithia when I was 8 to 9 years old, so warned my sister before she went. She was glad I did. Didn't tell her what happened. I just tell her it was sad. Yeah, see, that's the thing. It was a book, so there are people like you, Kari, who knew what was going on, and you were probably looking at the trailers going, is this the same book that I read? Because am I not right when I say that? That movie was nothing like what the marketing made it look out to be. Seriously, guys, jump on YouTube and search for the trailers for Bridge to Terabithia. It's this magical fantasy adventure, and that is not what the movie is. I'm telling you, it is not what the movie is. All right, guys, that will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thanks so much for being here. Don't forget, we'll be back again tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, talking about all our favorite things in the world of movies and movie news. Thank you, guys, for being here and being a part of that. Thank you to everybody who sent in Super Chat questions for the live question part of the show. And don't forget, guys, email me in your topics to john@thejohncampeashow.com. That'll do it for me for now, guys. My name's John Campea. Thanks for being here, and until next time, bye-bye.